the Bank.
Hello and welcome back to Money in the Bank. We're really excited you're still here with us. So we've already gotten through our 6-week series on how to revamp your budget, and we kind of wanted to change gears and just talk about what are some ways to really do that and to save money. So with me today, I have Brett here.
Hello.
So we're going to just walk through some areas where we've kind of taken a DIY approach to save the difference, I guess. One example that we actually did today is yesterday was Saturday. And so we were at the farmer's market and it's strawberry season. So, we saw some vendors there and they had some quarts of strawberries for sale for $5 a quart. And we bought one and we brought it home. And then I started thinking, okay, it's strawberry season. We want a bunch of strawberries. We want to freeze them for the year. But I don't really want to, that works out to be almost $4 a pound. And I was like, that still seems kind of expensive to me. So I hopped online and I found a U-Pick place near us where it was $1.55 a pound. So we loaded up our strawberry picking gear and headed over that way this morning and picked 20 pounds of strawberries and felt like we got, really a good deal it was about an hour of our time, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. It was in and out in an hour. It was a beautiful day. Yeah, strawberry picking gear, meaning my fingers, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
We wore some sneakers. But the place we went to had the buckets for us, so we didn't have to bring our own buckets. It was really easy. And they even took off the price of the cardboard box at the end, so we truly only paid for the strawberries.
Yeah, so they weighed everything and deducted all that and then gave us the boxes anyway. So yeah, it was a great experience. That was the first time I'd ever been there.
Yeah. So in an hour, we really got all the strawberries that we're probably going to use for the next year. And we got out of there for $27, I think it was. Yeah,
$27 for, I think, almost 18 or 19 pounds of strawberries.
Yeah. So a really good deal for us. And, when I kind of factored it out, we saved ourselves like $40 doing it that way.
For getting that many, yeah.
Yeah. And so, that's a huge... For an hour of our time, that's just like a really big savings. Plus, it wasn't just like direct an hour of our time, right? Like we enjoyed the experience. So we got some entertainment value along with, the saving money. So it was kind of like a win-win in that regard. We got to go and have a beautiful morning, out picking some berries, and we saved money. So that's just one example. And so that kind of prompted us to think about what other areas have we kind of done things where we've gained skills and actually gained, entertainment or happiness because we did things ourselves. And so another area, actually, we decided to build our own dining room bench. So do you want to talk a little bit about why we decided to do that, Brett?
Yeah, so we recently moved into a new house like 6 months ago, something like that. And for our kitchen space, it was kind of an interesting layout where on one side of it, there had like almost floor-to-ceiling windows in part of the room. So we didn't really want to put furniture there because it would cover up half the windows. And on the other side, there was like this L-shaped area. And so it would have been perfect if we put in like a custom bench to fit in there and then have the dining room table fill the rest of the space. Because putting a full dining room table with a full set of chairs wasn't quite wide enough to fit in that space. So we needed a kind of like a custom solution. And, we could have looked at buying them, and we looked at things on Pinterest and, some DIY things to get ideas for what we were looking for. And we said, hey, this is nothing complicated, right? This is basically a couple pieces of plywood or maybe a little nicer material with some structure around it. And, as far as building things are concerned, it's a very simple design. So that was kind of something we wanted to get started with getting our feet wet. Was building something that was very straightforward, making a box out of wood, basically, was what it was. And so we decided to move forward with that.
Yeah, and I always kind of joke that we probably have the sturdiest bench in the world because we were so cautious with our 2x4s that, like, they're every 10 inches. Nobody's fallen through our bench.
Oh, yeah, an elephant could step on that thing and I think it would still stand up. So it was so structurally sound.
Yeah, and so, in total, our bench cost us about $100 to make. And that included the wood, the 6 layers of paint that I got to put on it. We even bought a sander for this one, the orbital sander. Or no, you got that for Christmas.
Yeah, we got it for Christmas.
But we had an orbital sander, so that included the sandpaper we needed. So out the door, right around $100 is what it cost us in the end. Versus, I was looking at some custom benches online that were actually all the way up to $1,000. So we really, I mean, a tenth of what it cost. And yes, it took our time, but really we gained a lot of really valuable skills along the way, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's a pretty sizable piece of furniture in that space. It's like 8 feet long by, and it's an L shape, so it's 8 feet on one side, and it's like, 3 to 4 feet on the other side. So, it wasn't any more expensive for us to build something a little bit smaller. I mean, we're getting the 2x4s anyway. We're getting the plywood anyway, so we just used up the materials that we had available. And we don't have like a truck or anything, so we got them sized to basically fit in the car, and then it just worked out for us to fit in the space as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and, another good point mentioning the truck thing. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, I need a truck, which, as we talked about in our transportation episodes, are very expensive to buy trucks. And they're like, oh, well, I need it because maybe I'm going to haul stuff. Well, we haul almost everything with a Honda Civic. So I think if you get creative enough, you can find solutions. But ultimately, you can also actually rent a truck from Home Depot for like $20 an hour. And so if you're buying something there and then you rent it and you run it home and then you bring it back, that's a really cheap way to transport things if you really need that. So, but yeah, we found with getting the pieces cut down, we could fit them in the car still. So that was really nice. And it turned out really good. We finally got the cushions on it this past week and it looks really nice.
Yeah, so it was a couple new skills for us. I hadn't really done a lot of woodworking before. So we had some tools for it. I had like a saw that I had gotten for like a summer project, and nothing special, right? So that was needed that, and we needed like the sander to do the rest of the finish work on it. So we just cut down the wood, put some paint on it, sanded down the paint, put some more paint on it, sanded down again. A lot of rinse and repeat there, and then we learned some upholstery skills, and we just took some fabric that we found at the store and threw some foam cushions inside of it that we wanted to fit the cushiness factor that we wanted, and then in this particular project we ended up stapling it to the wood.
Mm-hmm. I liked that, the cushiness factor.
Right?
But yeah, we just stretched the fabric down and staple gunned it in, so that was actually super easy, and it's pretty comfortable, and it looks really nice. So that was one area. But another thing we did this past year is we're landlords now. And so, our tenants were complaining that the kitchen sink was leaking. And we had a plumber go over there before, but, plumbers are really expensive. Every time they visit, it's another expense. And so we were like, well, why don't we go look at the kitchen sink first so that we can understand what the problem is just before we get somebody in there. So we went over and we realized, there wasn't a good way to fix a particular faucet we had. So instead of calling a plumber, we just ran up to Home Depot. We found a really nice Delta faucet, popped that baby in ourselves, and saved the cost of the plumber coming out and doing a very simple task.
Yeah, so over the last year, as Angela mentioned, we just started being, property owners, from a rental perspective and being landlords for about a year now. And we ended up renovating the entire unit and redid all the flooring and everything. So we basically taught ourselves to do that. We jumped full into that, not having a lot of construction or remodeling background of any kind or doing anything at that scale at all. Right, ripping out the floor was like a crazy step for us to do that. Right, so we ripped out the carpet, we ripped out the flooring, replacing the the faucet, as Angela mentioned, changing things in the bathroom. Any little things that you wouldn't normally do in a regular person's comfort zone without having experience doing that. You can just look these things up on YouTube, and they're super simple to do this stuff now. And as long as you're just willing to give it 5 minutes of learning. It took us 30 minutes total to swap out the entire sink, start to finish.
Yeah, that was way easier than I ever imagined, because I guess growing up, I was always really scared of plumbing. I thought, like, I'm going to screw something up and there's going to be a leak, and you just hear water damage is like the worst thing in the world, right? And so until I was like, okay, let me at least see if I can do this, I didn't realize how simple it was. Like, there's not even a lot of connections for you to screw up. And it's all those quick connects now. So, they build them so that they click in themselves. You don't even have to worry about, like, tightening the pipe or anything.
Right, yeah, there's like a piece of like a plastic nut that you just like hand screw on with your hands, and then boom, you're done, and that's good enough. That's how it's designed to work, right? So for the new stuff anyway.
Yeah. And I think that was really good for me to learn because I was just like always really scared of plumbing, really scared I couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, for most people, when you grow up in in a house, you never change that stuff. Like you have a faucet in the bathroom or the faucet in the kitchen, and that stays there for 15, 20 years, right? Usually don't need to change it out. And then if something does go wrong with it, or if it starts leaking one day, that maybe you can fix that with, just one part of it, changing it out. But if the handle starts leaking or there's water coming out of the handle itself without it being turned on or off, and you're just like, oh man, what do I do now? And these are bigger problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, just change out the whole thing. It's not expensive. It doesn't take a lot of time. There's a 5-minute YouTube video for any of those little projects like that, and give it a shot. Don't be scared of those activities, or at least if you're curious about it and you think it's going to cost somebody a lot of money to bring it in, look it up. See, everybody's done DIY everything, or there's some contractor online showing you how complicated it is to change something out. See how hard it is. At least if you are going to get a quote from a contractor or a professional of any kind, then you have an idea of how difficult it is in the first place to see if they're giving you an accurate price or not.
Right. Well, and I think, sometimes when you can take on more of that stuff yourself, it feels good to do it. So, like, I'm notoriously a city girl. I just never did a lot of DIY stuff. The house that I lived in growing up was built when I was, going into first grade. So it was pretty new my whole lifetime. Nothing really went wrong. Nothing broke. And so for me, like, I just didn't deal with this house stuff, and learning that I can do it. I remember when we lived in our first apartment back in Michigan, and you were gone on a business trip, and our garbage disposal broke. And I was like, I'm going to have to call maintenance. Like, this is it. Brett isn't here to fix it. And I was like, you know what? Let me just see first if I can understand what's going on. And I look up this video, and it's like, hit big red button on bottom of disposal. And it's like a reset button and fix the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, come to find out now that we're landlords, that's not one of the number one issues that landlords have or get calls for, or maintenance calls, is, the garbage disposal stopped working, right? And yeah, a lot of people tell you to, tape the instructions on the inside of the door right underneath the sink, or give somebody a packet of information of this is how to fix these simple problems, right? And that button on the stupid garbage disposal is like one of those number one things. That's a major convenience for the tenant. It's a major convenience for the landlord. If you know how to do that yourself, it fixes it in 2 seconds, and yeah, you're good to go. So yeah, understanding that yourself it makes you feel like you did something, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think, I always thought, like, okay, everybody else must just be so much smarter than me or know so much more than me. And that's true in a lot of areas. There's so much that I don't know. But I think when I started realizing, but everyone's willing to share this knowledge on YouTube, and there's not this big, like, secret skill set that you need. Like, most people could do this with a little bit of effort, is when I was like, oh, it's worth giving it a shot. Putting in a little sweat equity to save that, cash flow is totally worth it in a lot of situations.
Yeah, there are a lot of skills out there that require, more technique or experience, like doing anything with electrical. Typically, you want to err toward the side of being a professional in that regard, because there are some dangers there. There are some simple things that you can get away with, but, there's most things involving electrical. You need to kind of know what you're doing there.
Absolutely. Well, and
it's very
even,
dangerous.
I would say even with plumbing, if you're looking to add a line or reroute stuff, like that's when it's probably time to call on the experts, because getting those connections right, underneath your drywall and stuff is very important. That's where you don't want leaks.
Right, and up to code, and there's rules and regulations around that,
yeah,
for a reason too, right? It's not just because some guy wants to sign off on a commission and check.
And personally, when I replace the furnace someday, I'm going to have an expert come in, just because dealing with gas is another thing that I personally wouldn't want to do. So I think there's a lot of areas where having an expert is still valid, but kind of going back to doing more yourself, a lot of construction things or things around the house, you really can do yourself. Like you were saying, we became landlords and we bought this property, and last year we renovated the whole thing. And even ripping up the carpet ourselves and installing new floor. That was something I never ever would have thought I could do. And we saved thousands of dollars doing that ourselves.
Oh yeah, because the situation there was there was old carpet from, I don't know, the late 70s probably, this bright blue carpet, So I think anybody that's had an older house like that probably had a similar shade of carpet in their house. And it was stapled directly onto the cement floor. And it was stapled and glued down, so we had to pull all the staples out, scrape all the
and the
glue
foam
out
was
stuff.
glued.
Oh, the pad of the carpet was glued down to the cement. But I mean, we spent what, almost 2 days. It just took us 2 days after work that we went over there, and we had all the staples removed. We had all the floor scraped up. We bought this like scraper that was relatively inexpensive. That was basically a shovel with a big razor blade at the end of it, and semi-dangerous. But yeah, we got through that, and it was in and out, and we had it all ready to go. And then we started installing the new flooring, and we just got some, we figured out what was the best flooring for that need, what was the best flooring on the market for the right price. And we got it all installed in there, and it's going to last, and it's in a great condition now. And it only, we did all that in like 3 or 4 days, rather than looking for contractors and then getting bids, and everybody's going to double the price on everything, from the materials and then all the labor and however many people they were going to have come in there.
Yeah. And so the full story on the condo is we bought the condo and we closed on it the second week of the month. And we repainted the entire unit, and it's about 1,000 square feet. So we repainted 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, a big living room and dining room area. We ripped out all of this horrendous carpet. We had to put down new transition pieces from the, carpet to the hardwood between rooms just to make sure the seams were good. But we did all that. We cut the corners ourselves, and we put on new quarter round along the trim to make it, really finish and pop and look nice. And all of that work took us 2.5 weeks, I think it was, in total, to do everything. And we saved boatloads of money by not hiring painters and by not hiring people to do the flooring. And it looks really good. And we learned so many valuable skills that now, as we have our own house and we're like, okay, maybe someday we want to change out the flooring, at least we feel like we can do that ourselves if we choose to. And we can save that money. And if we decide to go with, they do some really cool flooring patterns now that might be out of our league. So if we want something like that, at least we know, okay, we're paying for this because it is significantly harder to do this ourselves. So they're adding value. Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why this is a topic of conversation for today with this podcast, is because making those choices on your own, knowing that you have the power to make the decision and not being afraid because you are basically literally ignorant of the situation. You don't know how much skill is involved, and you don't know what the workload is. You don't know how to do it, right? If you know how to do it and you understand how much work it's going to take and you still choose to pay for it, that's totally fine, right? You should be making those decisions on a regular basis. So it may not be right for everybody to redo the flooring of their house, right? Or to go from carpet to hardwood or whatnot. But make decisions in other areas, like do you pay for a lawn service? Maybe it's only a couple $100 to get a lawnmower, and it's free for you to mow the lawn on a regular basis, versus like maybe close to $100 a month, over $100 a month. For some of those services, or snow removal, things like that in the winter. If you have the capabilities and physical abilities to do those things yourself, those are some big wins that you can have as far as putting money back in your pocket.
Yeah, and especially mowing the lawn, like, okay, so you get to be outside for an hour a week, and you get some physical activity, and ultimately that's a win-win. Just do it yourself, suck it up. Like, nobody loves yard work. Well, some people do. Our parents both do.
Parents both do.
When you can get out and there and do it yourself, it also gives you a sense of pride and a sense of ownership. Like, it's your house. Take ownership in doing it and get out there. And, snowing, that's another one that's tough, and it's not really fun, but you can save so much money. And really, being physical, especially, we both work desk jobs. So getting that hour of exercise is actually really good for us to kind of keep moving. So it's a win for your pocketbook, and it's a win for your health, which ends up being another win for your pocketbook, right? So, some other ideas that we were talking about, we've talked a lot about different things we've done that may not be applicable to, current situations, but we wanted to point them out because we wanted to show, like, there's nothing special about us. We're not carpenters, we're not plumbers, and yet we're looking up these videos and figuring out how to do these skills ourselves. So, a couple other ones that I've always kind of one thing I've always wanted to learn how to do is to change my own oil. I still, every 6 months need to go get my oil changed somewhere. And I know you can save so much money doing it yourself, and I know it's not that hard. I haven't taken the time to learn how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the same thing that, we have had on the radar for quite a long time now. Is, the maintenance on a car is extremely important to do when you're supposed to do it, right? There's those recommendations are there for a reason. If you follow those rules, your car will definitely last longer versus if you ignore those rules, things will start failing or not necessarily overheating and causing smoke, but pieces of metal inside of your engine will start wearing and rubbing against each other, and eventually, the metal flakes will start coming out of into the oil that is in there, and it's wearing over time because the pieces are rubbing on each other. So we're not saying don't, cut out the oil changes of your car. That'll help save you money. We're saying, if you do it yourself on the regular basis that you're supposed to, you're cutting that entire labor cost down to, nothing, because you're going to pay $0 for that because you're doing it yourself. And the price of the oil itself or replacing any of the gaskets or anything like that you can easily get anywhere that you walk into a store for, and people have all kinds of tips. The guys that work in those stores are extremely knowledgeable. You probably know somebody, or again, there's 1,000 YouTube videos out there that give great tips about how to do some of these things. I know I think Chris Fix is probably my favorite one that I found after looking up several tens of hundreds of videos about different cool things you can do with your car and different maintenance tips you can do with your car yourself. Changing your oil, changing your transmission fluid, changing your brake fluid. All those things are pretty easy to do. The oil and the fluid itself is pretty inexpensive, but you're going to get charged if you take it to, especially the dealership, let alone any mom and pop, car maintenance store or transmission shop or any other, auto shop. They're going to charge you almost, hundreds of dollars for each of those individual pieces of labor for those.
Well, and one big thing we actually learned how to do this year was, remember your car wasn't starting and it was making a weird noise, and we were like, what's going on? So, we opened the hood, which I always kind of laugh at because I don't actually know what I'm looking at just yet. I have a lot to learn when it comes to cars. But I did know that, the blue goop covering the battery should not have been there. I knew enough for that. And so one of my coworkers is actually great with cars. So I snapped him a picture and I said, I don't think this is what my battery is supposed to look like. But he actually headed over and he helped clean off your battery. And, he had a tester to be like, oh yeah, it's dead. So probably going forward, if we see that blue goop on our battery, I'll just assume it's dead. I don't even need to test it. But he helped us learn how to install a new battery, and it was super easy. It was as simple as running up to the auto store, grabbing the right battery, taking out the old one, plopping in the new one, reconnecting it, starting the car, good to go. And so that was something that I never would have done on my own, and that saved us a lot of money because not only could we do it right in our garage with, just pay for the $100 battery, so we didn't have any labor costs, but we also didn't have to get the car towed because, if we needed to take it to a shop, it wasn't running, we would have had to tow it up there and, really just cost a lot of money. So that was a huge area of savings, and that's another thing with cars, super simple to do, and every 6 to 7 years is when you need a new battery. So now I kind of know that, and I feel empowered, okay, if my car is making this noise and this is a solution. And I think the more that you can feel in control of when things happen to you, then you don't get as stressed and as panicked when these things do happen.
Right. It's, just feel empowered. Just learn enough to know what you're talking about for some of these areas. Take 10 minutes, look under the hood of your car, understand what those components are. And, if something's messed up, you can say, okay, most likely it's one of these 5 things, right? And there's standard things that'll probably fail in a car. The battery that is 10 years old because it had been, or 9 years and 6 months, I think, at that point on my car when the battery finally died on it. right, yeah, the battery, it was time for the battery to go there, and we got the life out of it. And yeah, being covered in blue goop when it wasn't there before. So look at your engine when it's looking in good condition, and then if something changes when something goes wrong, don't be scared of it. Don't be scared to pop the hood on the car and, just take a peek.
Well, and another area that I think you're really good about that I'm less good about is computers. So it's so easy for you to pop the side off your desktop and be like, oh, I'm going to swap out RAM and throw in a new solid state drive. And that's something I never have seen before, but you kind of learned how to build a computer because you can do it cheaper. And now when you have issues, you can diagnose the one piece that needs to be replaced instead of being like, oh, screw it, my computer's dead and I have to start completely over and go to Best Buy and buy whatever they tell me.
Yeah, and that's the same story, right? It's whether it's a car, whether it's a computer. I mean, it's all just a handful of parts that, probably there's only a couple things that could go wrong with it. And, as long as you know what the differences of those parts are, again, that's another 10-minute conversation you can have with somebody that knows what they're talking about, or video that you can look up, and you can instantly understand the components of something that before was like a black box of fear for a lot of people of, here's this thing and it either works or it doesn't work. And if it's not working right, then the whole thing's dead because I don't understand what is wrong with it, right? Whereas if I see there's a problem with the computer and I know exactly what, the symptoms are, of the disease that is affecting the computer, I can tell you, boom, that's the problem right there within 5 minutes, right? But I've been doing it for years. Again, you can spend 10 minutes on it and be pretty close, right? Or like half the way there and understand that there's, in a computer, it's not that complicated. There's only 7 parts really total. There's only 7 different components today, and depends on if it's a laptop or a newer computer today, maybe even less than that. So.
Yeah, and so that's this is why we wanted to bring this podcast to you, because when I talk to you about computers, you explain it that way and you're like, there's 7 pieces, it's so easy, just do it, right? And when I talk to my coworker about cars, he's like, cars are so easy, oil changes are so easy, just do it. It's not that hard, there's not that many things that can go wrong, there's not that many things that can break. And so, it's amazing when you talk to people who have these skill sets that you don't have, and then they break it down and they're like, it's literally as easy as putting on pants, And so I think when you can talk to people and understand that, okay, it's really not that hard and I just have to understand this basic stuff. And yeah, we're not saying, if something crazy is going on with your car, take it in, get it looked at, get a second opinion. But if it's routine things that are simple that you can hop on YouTube and figure out, try doing some more stuff yourself, because it's totally worth it, not just from a money savings perspective, but from the freedom and empowerment you get from doing this.
Right, and again, start with an oil change. See where you can go from there. There's oil in, oil out. Right, it drips into a pan. As long as you have something to catch the oil on the driveway, you can do it yourself.
Well, and for some of our listeners out there, you don't even need to start with an oil change. Start with mowing the yard. Right, if you haven't been mowing your yard, start there. You can keep getting your oil changes for now. Then we'll check back in 6 months. Maybe by then you can graduate.
Or if you don't have a yard and you're living in an apartment, make sure you can hit that button on the garbage disposal. And
Yeah. So, wherever you are in life, try to figure out what you can kind of do yourself to save some money. And honestly, I'd love ideas and suggestions from people. If you have different things that you've done to save money in your life, or different projects that you've done that you're like, wow, I'm really proud of this, let me know. I'd love to hear what other people are doing, because I think that's how we all learn together. So thanks for listening this week. I hope we gave you some ideas of things that you can try on your own. And I look forward to hearing some other ideas that we haven't tried yet. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank.